Heya Cryptozens, it's 10 p.m. Pacific time. The date is October 14th, 2022. Welcome back to the Crypto Overnighter. My name is Nikodemus, and I'll be your host as we take a nightly look at the crypto, NFT, and metaverse space and the industry that surrounds it. And keep in mind, nothing in this show should ever be considered financial advice. The UK's Home Office Department is their government's agency that deals with immigration and crime. And their aim is to make it easier for their law enforcement agencies to be able to seize cryptocurrency if they think it's going towards funding terrorists. So there are some amendments planned for the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Bill in the UK. And this is a bill we talked about recently. It was introduced last month, and it's set up to make it easier for the bobbies to seize, freeze, and recover crypto from alleged criminal operations like money laundering, cybercrime, human trafficking, and drugs. Now, basically, they want to mirror that, to give British law enforcement the right to seize cryptocurrency if they suspect that it's helping to fund terrorism. A spokesperson from the Home Office said, quote, "This is all to ensure that our law enforcement agencies, including counterterrorism policing, have all the necessary powers to effectively seize, freeze, and forfeit crypto assets that could be or have been used for terrorist purposes." So, mirroring the rules in the country's counterterrorism laws would give police the authority to freeze assets in situations like Hisham Chaudhry. He was found guilty of using Bitcoin to help fund the Islamic State. Suella Braverman is the Secretary of State for the Home Department. And at the second reading of the bill, she said, quote, "Crypto assets are increasingly being used for malign and terrorist purposes, and we intend to crack down on this, and will be bringing forth a government amendment to mirror the changes in Part 4 of this bill into counterterrorism legislation." Now, staying with the UK here, because they have a couple of personnel updates. First up, their Financial Conduct Authority has a new head of assets. The Financial Conduct Authority is really UK's main financial regulatory agency. And so they've chosen Binu Paul for the job. He replaces the department's interim head, Victoria McLaughlin. And McLaughlin has served in the position since April. So Paul left his previous position as the FinTech Specialist Lead at New Zealand's Financial Markets Authority and has already started work in his new role. And so his job will be to lead the FCA's regulatory activities, looking for scams and frauds. Now, in the past, the FCA has not been all that friendly to crypto, but things have changed. And this might be part of the government's new direction to take a more balanced approach to regulation in their quest to become the hub of crypto innovation. That's something that they claim they want. And like the Home Office, the FCA has their own role in the fight against terrorism financing. They are the UK's lead authority on anti-money laundering and counterterrorism measures, ever since early 2020. Now, right now, all crypto firms have to register with the FCA if they want to work in the UK. Right now, 39 firms have registered. So there's this new bill going through the legislative process in the UK right now, the Financial Services and Markets Bill. And if this passes, the FCA will be granted even more authority to regulate crypto. Also in that bill, it gives legal status to stablecoins. That said, the bill might not pass. It was first debated in Parliament last September, and it's due to be debated in the House of Commons next week. It's kind of uncertain given that the UK's finance minister, Kwarteng, got the boot today. That's right. So it's my guess that it's due to the market's reaction to his planned tax cuts announced last September. So 38 days after taking the job, Kwarteng announced his resignation on Twitter. This bill, the Financial Services and Markets Bill, that was his deal. Well, now that's going to fall to his replacement, even if only temporarily. Jeremy Hunt will be filling that role. And if that name sounds familiar, it might be because he is the former foreign minister. And he was named to replace Kwarteng shortly after Kwarteng was dismissed. He is currently the chairman for the House of Commons Healthcare Committee, and he has previously served as minister responsible for health and culture. don't read too much into this, but when Theresa May was ousted from the PM slot, Hunt was in the running for that job. And he said that he wanted to make the UK the next Silicon Valley, that he wanted to make it a tech innovation hub. Now, taking a look at our own government and the House Financial Services Committee, Ranking Member Patrick McHenry was talking about stablecoin legislation. He thinks that the problem is that the conversation has become quite unmoored where financial technology is concerned, and regulators need to get back to fixing real-world problems. And right now, he's working on legislation to make the stablecoin environment more clear. Because right now, there is no legal standard on what constitutes a stablecoin or any other kind of digital assets. He called that situation retrograde. So this has been a bipartisan effort with the HFSC chair, Maxine Waters, and the Treasury Department as well. Negotiations have been ongoing for months. And he seems to be optimistic, especially since this is happening, as he said, in an election year in a divided Washington. Now, speaking of the trade-offs that have been a necessary part of the process, he said, quote, "We agree on the asset. That is a narrowly defined set of assets, one-to-one backing, no leverage. Then we get into more complex conversations." Now, McHenry has said that if he becomes the chair of the HFSC after the midterms, he would be making crypto regulations a top priority, which could happen if enough Republicans are elected to give them a majority in the House of Representatives. Now, for her part, Representative Waters was speaking at a conference on the subject of stablecoins and digital wallets. She was clear that technology needs to be user-friendly. She added, quote, "People are often excluded from the traditional financial system." On the subject of stablecoins, Tether has some news. Because Tether's Holdings Limited has said that they're done with commercial paper. And this has been a big area of contention and criticism that they've had to deal with for a long time because people were denigrating the quality of Tether's reserves. So yesterday, they announced that they'd gotten rid of all of the commercial paper and replaced that with US T-bills. A company representative said, quote, "Reducing commercial papers to zero demonstrates Tether's commitment to backing its tokens with the most secure reserves in the market." So this is a big deal for them, as detractors have focused on the quality of Tether's reserves, especially in the face of the Terra Luna event. And then it didn't help that about a year ago, Bloomberg said that Tether might have oversized exposure to Chinese commercial paper. And that was right when one of the largest commercial developers was on the edge of collapse. We covered it in August when Tether hired BDO Italia to conduct regular monthly audits and attest to the readiness of their dollar reserves. And speaking of Tether and their reserves, they are currently involved in a lawsuit. They're part of a class action lawsuit that's against Tether and Bitfinex. And the allegation is that they manipulated the market by releasing unbacked Tether. Now, what's interesting here is the plaintiffs. Roche Friedman is representing 5 of the plaintiffs in this case. Well, they've been involved in a bit of a scandal, which has made them unpopular enough that Kirby McNerney and Radis Law, who are 2 firms that are also representing plaintiffs, they petitioned the court, submitting a request that Roche Friedman be removed from the case. They call Roche Friedman a distraction to the court, that they and not investor claims would become the focus, prejudicing the rights of the claimants. They said, quote, "To avoid a sideshow about the adequacy of counsel or the motives and use of litigation and discovery, a new leadership structure is necessary." So at issue here is an expose that was released by CryptoLeaks. And this expose alleges that Kyle Roche and Ava Labs had a secret agreement to use the legislative process to damage the competition. Now, Kyle Roche has himself withdrawn from the case. That's not enough, because now Tether is also requesting the firm be removed from the case. In addition, they want assurances that the firm destroyed all of the defendant-issued documents and that they hadn't been shared around. That's because that's exactly what they're accused of doing, that they would require sensitive information from the defendants like Tether during the discovery process, and then they'd share and use that information with Ava Labs. allegedly. As we like to do on this show, let's take a look at the numbers. At the time of writing, the global crypto market cap is $918 billion. That's down 0.72%. The top 5 cryptos by market cap are Bitcoin down 1.26%, Ethereum up 0.38%, Tether, USDC, and Binance Coin down 1.25%. Christopher Waller is a U.S. Federal Reserve Board governor, and he was giving a speech at a symposium at Harvard today. And he was talking about a central bank digital currency. It's his position that a CBDC would not have the same qualities that foreign countries love about the U.S. fiat currency. It's his view that a stablecoin could do a better job. So we like this guy. Anyway, Waller was looking at the role of the U.S. dollar worldwide. And he said that this is an area where a potential CBDC, economics, and national security all overlap. That the dominance of the U.S. dollar brings benefits to the United States and other countries that have taken the U.S. dollar as their reserve currency. He said that the reason that everybody wants the dollar isn't a tech-related issue. So rolling out a digital version of the same thing isn't necessarily a win. He doubts that there's any threat to the U.S. dollar's status due to, quote, the purported shifting payments landscape as a result of the growth of digital assets, particularly CBDCs. He did say that foreign CBDCs might find themselves gaining ground against the U.S. dollar if a CBDC is adopted. As far as the U.S. economy goes, he said, quote, a U.S. CBDC is unlikely to dramatically reshape the liquidity or depth of U.S. capital markets. It's unlikely to affect the openness of the U.S. economy, reconfigure trust in U.S. institutions, or deepen America's commitment to the rule of law. Now, as far as a stablecoin goes, however, he's not concerned that stablecoins could affect the strength of U.S. economic policy. He noted that all the major stablecoins are already denominated in U.S. dollars. He also said, quote, U.S. monetary policy should affect the decision to hold stablecoins similar to the decision to hold U.S. currency. And he offered up a couple of statements that should encourage anyone like me who is anti-CBDC. He said, quote, I'm highly skeptical that a CBDC on its own could sufficiently reduce the traditional payment frictions. The other statement was, I am unsure whether even a large issuance of a stablecoin could have anything more than a marginal effect on the U.S. role of the dollar. So, from economic policy, let's turn our attention to the subject of crime, specifically the floor rate of bounties, because they may have been significantly boosted. A couple of nights ago, we brought you news of the Mango Markets hack. $117 million worth of crypto was stolen, and the hacker made it clear he wasn't going to be satisfied with the standard deal, the typical 10% offered in terms of a bug bounty. Instead, the attacker demanded $70 million and immunity from prosecution. What he did was he set up a proposal in the Mango Markets DAO, and this proposal gave him the $70 million, paid bad debt from the Treasury, don't freeze the money, don't prosecute. This was a governance proposal. So he does the obvious thing. He submits it as a governance proposal and then uses his stolen tokens to vote yes. Reactions were predictably negative. One user wrote, quote, "You're disgusting. What you did is wrong in every way possible. The reasonable thing to do would have been to disclose the vulnerability to the team, not exploit it. I hope the law enforcement community shows you zero mercy." Well, far from showing no mercy, the Mango Markets community seems to be ready to make a deal. They've proposed terms. These terms would see the hacker returning $67 million worth of the tokens. That would mean the hacker gets to keep $47 million worth. Now, 98% of the votes that have been cast in favor of this new proposal. Enough votes have been cast that the quorum has been reached, which means that this could be settled as early as tomorrow. The proposal stated, quote, "The funds sent by you and the Mango DAO Treasury will be used to cover any remaining bad debt in the protocol. All Mango depositors will be made whole. By voting for this proposal, the Mango token holders agree to pay off the bad debt with the Treasury and waive any potential claims against accounts with bad debt and will not pursue any criminal investigations or freezing of funds once the tokens are sent back as described above. While voting so far is overwhelmingly positive, some DAO members are not in agreement. One voter wrote, quote, "Agree 100% that making user funds whole ASAP is the top priority, but a $50 million bug bounty is ridiculous. At most, the exploiter should get their costs back, plus $10 million. $10 million white hat bounty is what was offered to the $600 million wormhole hacker. Mango can negotiate better than this, especially given the exploiter is essentially doxxed." And now a quick look at the CFTC, because the Commodity Future Trading Commission also made news again today. Christy Goldsmith Romero is a commissioner with the CFTC, and it is her view that the CFTC needs to change their approach to rules for retail investors. Now, as she believes, it looks like they're going to have the authority over spot crypto trading. So she's going to propose a new retail investor definition. This comes to us from an interview that she had with CoinDesk on Friday. She said that she would start with a rough sketch of the idea posted on the CFTC's website for public comment. She said, quote, "We've got more retail investors coming into our markets that traditionally had been largely institutional." So from her point of view, the problem is that the CFTC thinks of all retail investors as pretty much the same. She points out that it includes, quote, "regular people all the way up to somebody with $10 million. Now, adding a new category could help the CFTC treat regular crypto investors differently from their institutional players. This would probably mean more limits and protections for small-scale investors. She said, quote, "You want to make sure that you can provide expanded access to retail investors, but in a way that's safe and affordable for them, which might look very different than how the institutions or how a high net worth individual might purchase." Now, Goldsmith Romero is the lead commissioner for the CFTC's Technology Advisory Committee, and she suggested that having the newly created category could help the agency split things up. For example, setting up rules on the use of leverage by investors. They could break those rules up for retail versus institutional investors. She said that doing so could give retail investors, quote, "more consumer protections, maybe more disclosures, written in a way that regular people understand." Now, she said that she's not married to this idea and that she wants to hear from people who disagree. She said, quote, "I'm happy to listen to all of that, try to get right. I'm happy to listen to all of that to try to get it right. I'm just throwing out a concept of something that I think is not quite set up right. Our definition of retail really doesn't work for this asset class." I want to thank you, my listeners, because when you stop listening, I will stop talking. We'll see you tomorrow night.